Today we're working on a 2004 Dodge Ram 3500, and this option is with dualies. What we're doing is replacing the right front wheel speed sensor. Right front, left front will be very similar. Here's the speed sensor wiring. You can follow it up to the connector. So I already have it disconnected. And if you look where it resides, is right back in here. So we have to pull the brakes off. And on these dualies it has this spacer. So first what we're gonna do is remove this spacer here, and that's 7/8. So jack the vehicle up, take the tire off, 7/8. We'll get on these and we'll crack them loose, pull it off, and then the spacer we'll have to beat off, but it'll come off. One thing you can do to keep the hub from spinning while you're trying to crack these loose is to put a screwdriver in between the rotor fins and the caliper, and that'll prevent this from spinning. So you probably have to hit it with a hammer to bust these loose, but if you do this, then it'll just keep things in place. Once you have all these out, you can see it separates from the rotor and then just pops off. And that's all that is. That's just a spacer. So now everything is just like standard brakes, just a rotor over a hub and the calipers. So we could pull the caliper off next, and that'll be this back here, and then one on the bottom. And then the caliper can separate, and we'll suspend that out of the way. And then this rotor just pops off. If you don't have dualies, then you probably don't have the spacer. So if you don't have dualies, then everything from this point on will be the same. To get better access to these back caliper bolts, I like to just turn the steering wheel, and that opens up this back side. And these caliper bolts are 18 millimeter. Now that the caliper is removed, suspended out of the way, I just have it bungeed to the spring there. Then this rotor just comes right off. Let me just pull it off right now. And then you can see right here you have access to the wheel speed sensor. And the wire goes behind this dust shield and then sits right inside the hub. Let me see if the shadow's there, right there. And it's that Allen. I'll get that Allen size in a second. And you can notice too, now would be a good time, you can these little clips, just unclip the wire or the line from the brake hose as well. And then see if you follow it. No, that's just a clip. So really everything is clipped. That's the only bolt for the wheel speed sensor is this Allen. Let me get that size. So that Allen for the wheel speed sensor is 5 millimeter. So once you pull that bolt out, it should just lift right up. And yours might be stuck. This one actually came out really easy. Oh, look at that. That might be why it's not getting a signal. You can blow some of that stuff off. You know, if you look in there, it might not focus. Let me try to get it to focus. Looks like there's a lot of grease inside that hole. Yeah, it's not focusing. Interesting. So anyway, this may not have been a bad sensor, but more just a debris caked sensor. You can see in the dust plate there's this little notch here. That's the window for this to go through. So you can pull this off, and then you can get the wire around and then through this little gateway right here. I'll do it with both my hands, but that's how it comes out, is right through there. And then it's free and you're ready to snake in the new one. Some things to keep in mind: this has shims. We'll have to look at the new one. I don't think it has shims, but there's a reason, because you want to be a certain distance from the tone ring on the wheel hub. So if you're too close, then obviously that's going to hit and damage the sensor. If you're too far away, then it won't be able to pick up the magnetic signature to create a signal. So if this has 2, I'm going to put 2 on the new one, make sure it goes in the hole the same depth. Just something to note. Just for demonstration purposes, I cleaned off the old sensor, put it back in without those shims, and notice when I spin the hub. I don't know if you could hear that. Kind of that clicking. I thought it would show up a little better, but that's the sensor hitting the top of that tone ring You can see there's a lot of grease in there for some reason. It's not focusing. So I tried to clean off. A good idea too before you put things back together is just spin the hub and just look at every tooth on that ring just to be sure that you don't have an issue with the hub. So that's that. So let's go ahead and route the new one in. Got the new one here. So let's get that routed in. So when you pull out the new sensor, just make sure that everything lines up, that they're the same size and everything before you put it in. And then that way too, how long this shaft is right here. If they're exactly the same, then you know that those two shims on mine would both go back in. So that's what we're gonna do. Once you have the new sensor in and bolted down, go ahead and give it a spin. Make sure there's nothing dragging or hitting inside. After that, now you could just start plugging in all these rubber pieces along the brake line, and when it comes to here, it goes behind the brake hose. And then this here, they gave me a new one, but I'm just gonna reuse the old one. If this ends up breaking, that's good to know. If yours comes with a new one and this breaks off while you're in the process of removing it, no problem, just put in the new one. But once you have everything clicked together, you can plug it in whenever, now or after. But once everything's in, this is just a good snug tight. Doesn't have to be cranked down, but you do want it snug. The new bolt came with a little bit of Loctite on mine, I noticed. But yeah, once this is all routed, then we can start putting the brakes back together. So you could do this two different ways. So the caliper's just on, and I have the wheel nut holding it in place so it doesn't move on me, and then now we can put the caliper over, bolt it in. Or instead of doing this, you could just, if you have the spacer, go ahead and put the spacer on before you put the caliper on. That way the caliper, the rotor isn't moving around while you try to put the caliper on. That's what I'm gonna do, is put the spacer on, just snug it down, then put the caliper on. So now we could take the caliper, make sure the pads are in their spot, flip it over, and then just put the caliper on, put the bolts through, and torque them down. So I had to separate my caliper from the bracket in order to get the brakes back on, and these brakes they're gone. They're gonna get them replaced soon, but not today. But anyway, so the caliper bracket bolts right here have two different torques depending on your truck. If you have the HD, the heavy duty, or the SRT 10, these are gonna be torqued down to a whopping 250 foot-pounds. So that's for the HD and the SRT 10, 250 foot-pounds. If you have the light duty, then it's 130 foot-pounds. So make sure you know what truck you have. This is the HD, so they're getting torqued to 250 foot-pounds. All right, got my caliper back on. If you had to remove yours as well, these caliper bolts are 24 foot-pounds. Regardless of if it's light duty or heavy duty, it's the same, 24 foot-pounds on that. And then now once that's torqued down, we can get this spacer tightened. If you don't have the spacer, you're done here. If you do have the spacer, then that's our next move, is to tighten that down. So now we're ready to tighten these down. We can put our screwdriver in here and it won't move on us, and we can tighten these to 96 foot-pounds. And you could do like a crisscross pattern. Do one on this side and one over here, and one up here, one down. Kind of like how you tighten up a tire, that kind of star pattern. Do the same here. So once you have everything tightened and put back together, go ahead and put the tire back on and then take it for a test drive. Now, ABS system is a continuous monitoring system, so if you have a light on and it's for the wheel speed sensor, once you get moving again, it will check for wheel speed signals, and if everything looks okay, it'll turn the light off automatically. If you have a scan tool, you can go ahead and look at the wheel speeds to see if they're all the same. I'm stopped right now and it defaults at 3. If you don't have a scan tool, then really, if that light goes out, then you know, hey, the new one's working and we're back in action. So there you go. We'll see you on the next one.